Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. Happy Wednesday to you all. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us. We have a lot to get to as we have a lot of clarity now on the Miami quarterback situation with Darian Mensah and Duke as that got settled pretty quickly after we got off the air on Monday, kicking off the week as far as Darian Mensah drama goes. So that is now behind us as we know where the former Duke signal caller is heading officially, and that is Miami. We'll break it down on this edition of All Access AM. We'll talk about Duke as well, what it means at the quarterback position, and of course, Duke basketball, a national championship contender once again, flexing their muscles Monday night in a big Monday matchup. And we had a wild Tuesday night, even across the ACC, as some teams found themselves in hotly contested battles to try and grab some key wins in one particular case that would have surprised you. So we'll talk about all of that and more. We'll talk about quarterbacks on this show as well, looking at the ACC quarterback situation going into next year, why it is such a strong league. Of course, Darian Mensah staying in the league despite transferring helps that as well. But top to bottom, it's a really good year. I was talking with some coaches earlier this week and just talking with them about the quarterback position and how much it truly impacts where not only your program as a whole goes, but really your conference and just how difficult it is to prepare week in, week out, and why quarterbacks are really the driving force in a sense behind these colleges and these conferences that have put themselves up so high, why those conferences are the way they are, because that means you've got to address certain positions to try and counteract them. So we'll kind of have a little bit of a discussion around that, what the league looks like from the quarterback position next year and why it is so difficult to defend that group heading into the 2026 college football season. So Billy Embody here, really excited to have you guys with us on All Access AM. And we are, of course, presented by our friends at OPW Solutions on Wednesday. Appreciate AJ Crow and his team for supporting us. Of course, this time of year across the country, people are dealing with it. Snow and ice control. I bring it up all the time on the show because it is something that you don't realize that you need until you need it for your business. So contact OPW Solutions. Go to opwsolutions.com for more information on what they can help you out with. Commercial landscaping, power washing, parking lot services, Christmas lights. Start that planning early for next year. Fence maintenance and more. But most importantly right now, with the country really dealing with this winter storm and the after effects, reach out to them at 214-444-2305 and learn what they could do for you in the snow and ice control space. It is a really difficult and precarious process to go through, and AJ Crow and his team do an outstanding job making sure not only your business is dealt with, but your business is dealt with safely. For his team, for all their teams, they've got to make sure that they have all their equipment ready to rock. And so that's a piece of it, so that when it is time, they'll be ready to service you and your needs. So make sure you support our friends at OPW Solutions right now. Okay, jumping into the show. Like I said, we've got Darian Mensah discussion. Miami's still not done. They picked up a couple more transfers out of this deal as well, and we'll break those down. On top of that, we do have a coaching hire made at Stanford as well that we'll touch on. We'll get into some basketball, and we'll do it on the show. So excited to have you guys with us on this Wednesday. And another late night for us, we had the East-West Shrine Bowl in Dallas here, and we made it out there. And really next year, we're excited to bring that to you, hopefully with less snow and ice on the ground. That really thwarted our whole plans because there's so many ACC guys that we saw out there. Haynes King was playing in the game, led his team to a win. Shocker, Haynes King willing his team to a win, made some nice throws out there. Got a chance to see him in action as he prepares for the NFL draft. Cade Klubnik was there this week, but did not play in the game. SMU running back TJ Harden was out there as well. But a couple of Duke guys were in on it too. And so it was good to see them have a big impact on that game. And one of them had a fumble recovery as well in the end zone. That was not Paul. One of their defensive linemen fell on a fumble in the end zone, so their roster wasn't loading for me. I thought it was Paul last night, but Duke had a couple of guys that were in on some big plays in that game. So it was cool to see. That's why ACC roster the 2026. But so it was late night getting out of the Star over there where they have it over at the Dallas Cowboys facility, and what they put together for these guys is really cool. But next year, we were really hoping this year was going to be that year, but because of snow and ice, we weren't able to get out there and spend 4 days interviewing all these guys, bringing you guys special ACC content. So unfortunately, had that happen, but we were able to get out there and just get around the game on Tuesday night. It was on NFL Network in case you guys want to watch it back, but some good ACC talent out there as well. But one talent that is going to be going through the NFL draft process next year, in all likelihood, I who knows at this point, because he does have 2 years of eligibility remaining. But Duke quarterback Darian Mensah has officially committed to Miami. He visited the program on Tuesday and spent some time around Coral Gables and the Miami program with Cooper Barkate, their really productive wide receiver, his top wide receiver at Duke this past year. And they were able to get their time around Mario Cristobal's program, learn about the plan for them. And eventually, by the end of Tuesday, they had a deal in place and an official commitment to land at Miami. So this is a big deal for the Hurricanes to get this one done. They moved around, of course, the enrollment schedule with Darian Mensah and Cooper Barkate, having been kind of after that enrollment deadline for the Miami, for the school portion of it, because these guys still go to school and do all that. So there were a lot of balls in the air, but Duke and Darian Mensah did reach that settlement Monday after we got off the air, and the terms were not disclosed. I'm sure there's money being, forked over as far as a buyout goes and things like that. And, Duke does have, a point here where they want the players that they bring in to stand by those deals and execute their end of things, just like Duke executes their ends of things. So Darian Mensah does get that settlement. His agency handled that, and then they get, the deal done with Miami. And for Miami, this is a big deal. Darian Mensah is one of the top quarterbacks in the entire country, one of the top few passers, and in particular returning passers in terms of yardage and production in the country. And he did it with Cooper Barkate, one of the top wide receivers in the entire country last year. Just looking at what he was able to do, just dropping things off, former Harvard transfer, very savvy route runner, and somebody that Darian Mensah clearly trusts. And so when you look at what they're going to be able to do with him, and Malachi Toney coming back next year, this is an explosive offense for Shannon Dawson, and Mark Fletcher returning is obviously going to help as well. They'll have Gerard Pringle back in the backfield too. A lot of talent on that Miami offense. The question is, how well are they going to be able to protect? That's going to be something that impacted Darian Mensah a lot, I think, at Duke, just with his inability at times to really make a ton of plays moving around. It's just not something he's as comfortable with when the pocket is moved. So he still makes plays. You don't do that without you don't lead the ACC in passing without having that type of a level of ability to move around. But sometimes when things do get uncomfortable, there is a little bit of that in his game that still needs to be developed. And with Cooper Barkate coming with him to Miami, that's going to help him feel a little bit more comfortable in this new setting, in this new scene that he's going to be in with the Hurricanes. Because we saw Carson Beck come in and he didn't have spring. Darian Mensah is going to have spring. That'll help. But they do have a lot of work to be done now, and getting him developed and ready for this upcoming season still, because he's not a finished product. And that's the exciting thing if you're a Miami fan, is Darian Mensah is not a finished product. He's not, this Carson Beck, which, even coming off injury, you kind of knew exactly what you were going to get in a sense from him, because that's who he is. Darian Mensah making the move from Tulane to Duke last year and the jump in production that he had at the same time, Duke did lose 5 games last year. There were games when Darian Mensah did not play up to certainly what his, money situation is, but also just as a whole, and as a high level starting quarterback. So there were some moments where he was able to, kind of pad his passing yardage a touch, but nonetheless, very, very talented passer that's going to be surrounded by a lot of talent at Miami that Mario Cristobal is assembling. And Miami continues to hit the transfer portal here at the quarterback position. This marks 3 straight years that they've gone after a transfer quarterback, Carson Beck, and then Cam Ward, of course. And this is now in the era where you have to wonder if this is just going to be what they do and what space they play in at the quarterback position. They might be a team that dabbles at the top of the high school quarterback market. But also, I think Mario Cristobal has shown with his team, they have a very specific quarterback in mind, and a quarterback, uh, I would say, who wants to manage the game. Like, I'd be intrigued to look at when we fast forward to the end of 2026, just how many yards Darian Mensah has thrown for, how many touchdowns, where that ranks. Are people going to be sitting back and saying, "Wow, what a job Darian Mensah did orchestrating a team and leading them back into the college football playoff. He took a back seat to a strong run game, got the ball in space to Malachi Tony, to Cooper Barkate, and guys like that." Or is it going to be he was still a little too aggressive? He didn't make some plays when he needed, and Miami is maybe sitting at home and fell just short of a college football playoff appearance again. That is going to be all on his shoulders, because when you're going to command the amount of money that Darian Mensah is going to make, you're going to have to produce, or else people are going to react the way fans do in the NFL when you bring in high-priced free agents and they don't pan out. So it is national championship or bust for Miami at this point. That is where they're at in the Mario Cristobal era. That's what these fans want. That's what they almost got a couple of Mondays ago now in Hard Rock Stadium, and they'll look to be back in the college football playoff this year with Darian Mensah at the helm. Cooper Barkate comes with him from Duke, and you can't really sleep on this addition in the Miami wide receiver room as well, because he came over from Harvard, where he was spent a few seasons over there playing for them and in the Ivy League, and he showed his smarts, right off the bat at Duke, coming in, having back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and had 72 receptions for 1,106 yards, 7 touchdowns in 2025, catching all those passes from Darian Mensah. High volume guy, very similar. If you kind of pair him with a Malachi Tony, you can run mesh all day, which is kind of where Shannon Dawson and that scheme derives from, the air raid. That's going to be something that opposing defenses are really going to have a hard time containing, because mesh is such, I think, a relatively easy concept to defend on paper. But when you're in the heat of battle and you're running those crossing routes, and teams that do them and teams that do them well, they get so good at finding those natural picks and avoiding the pass interference calls and doing all of those things to really create separation and create that space for those wide receivers to get the ball in space and make big plays. And when you have Cooper Barkade, who's done it at the ACC level, you have Malachi Tony, who's done it at the ACC level at a high level, you're going to be looking at those two receivers and you're going to say, okay, who's got who and how do we slow this down? And it's not a concept as well that takes a lot of time to develop. And with Darian Mensah having that experience with Cooper Barkate, now just having to tag team it with Malachi Tony, you're looking at a fun offense that I think that was probably where it hurt just a little bit this season, where at times you looked at where Miami stalled out. That was the issues that I think they didn't have a secondary guy. And I don't want to say as a whole, and I don't want to say that it was, overly, um, you know, aggressive as far as how much it held this Miami offense back, but it did feel like at times they did not have that go-to player or enough go-to players offensively to run some of those concepts and keep the ball moving. Carson Beck, and case in point, kind of last drive, there were a couple moments where he dropped it off, but he eventually took that last shot probably because he felt he needed to, and gets picked off by a great Indiana defense. So it is a talented duo that is now in Miami, not only from the quarterback wide receiver position. That's a three-headed monster when you add in Darian Mensah with Cooper Barkate and Malachi Toney. But Malachi Toney and Cooper Barkate, two of the best duos in the ACC and maybe the entire country at the wide receiver position. Miami was not done. They did add another transfer from the portal as well. Oregon State defensive back Conrad Hussey did transfer to Miami. He spent 1 year with Oregon State after coming over from Florida State. So he flips over from the rivalry side of things in a sense, just took a gap year over there playing for the Beavers. Played in 3 games this season, 5 tackles, 27 games over 3 years, though. So he's had a lot of experience, 45 tackles, half tackle for loss, 1 pick, and 3 pass breakups, a fumble recovery, 2 forced fumbles. He's from St. Thomas Aquinas down there in Fort Lauderdale, so he gets right back in his backyard. He was a 4-star prospect coming out of the 2023 class, and he is certainly somebody that Miami is looking for a depth piece, a depth add. And when you have the secondary that they've had and some of the young talent that you see coming up with that team, Jabari Antoine comes to mind, who played a lot in the semifinals and national championship game. You're going to have a really, really impressive group back there, and just continuing to stack up depth is what stands out to me for this Miami team as they again look to make a run back to a national championship. And it's going to be difficult because you're losing so much off that defensive line that really made that Miami defense go, and they're going to have some things to work through. And when you have depth at the secondary position, that is a way that you're going to help yourself, is give yourself options. If you're having to deal with some of those drives that maybe you didn't deal with this past year because you had defensive pressure from the defensive line and that group, they're going to have to find ways to get that again this season. So let's jump in the chat. Appreciate Air Oski being here with us on this Wednesday. If you have a chance, curious which portal class you're most impressed with and most disappointed in. I love when you guys give me not only questions that are, all right, who's the best, but who's the opposite end? What is the group that you don't like, or what is the group that needs most work to do with? And I think when you look at the ACC, and if you're watching on our YouTube, I'll throw it up here on the screen, but this is the ACC rankings of the transfer portal. And this is a great question and timed well, so we appreciate that because we haven't shown the rankings in a while. It's really been since middle of December. But here's the group. Louisville leading the way, according to On3's transfer portal rankings. Virginia Tech, number 2. Miami, number 3. Cal, number 4. SMU, number 5. Virginia, 6. Clemson, 7. Stanford, 8. Florida State, 9. Syracuse, 10. Wake Forest, 11. Georgia Tech, 12. NC State, 13. Boston College, 14. North Carolina, 15. Duke, 16. Pitt, 17th. It is a group that I think you've got to give. Here's my thing. I think when you look at what Louisville has done, and they are the number 1 ranked class, so I'm not trying to just take the easy way out here. But when you look at what Louisville has done outside of the quarterback position, in a sense, they have gone all in on the NIL front. And it's much needed, and it is well overdue. And we know that Jeff Brom was certainly battling for that throughout his discussions with Louisville. But for them to go out and grab some of the players that they did through the transfer portal and really address their position at a high level in terms of the wide receiver position in particular, I think about Trey Richardson coming over from Vanderbilt, a really, really impressive wide receiver who is a dog that a lot of Vandy people were really disappointed to leave or to see leave from that program. He's a top 100 player in the portal. He was a former junior college wide receiver who comes over and has just been able to be a big impact guy when they needed him to be. He had multiple games over 124 yards receiving, which I think at the college level is kind of hard to do these days. But he gives Vandy, or he gives Louisville, a player that can be kind of similar to a Cooper Barkate or a Malachi Toney, very similar in terms of being able to be explosive, run plays out of the slot that you can see a big win for over the course of the season. So when you see Lincoln Kienholz coming in at the quarterback position, and the bet that they've made on him to be the guy, that that's a big risk, I think, for Louisville, and having them place their bet on a quarterback who hasn't really proved too much as far as the college level, which is why I think their transfer class is even more impressive in a sense, because they surrounded him with so many different weapons for this offense, and Jeff Brom. But he was a former 4-star quarterback, so he's not a slouch or anything like that. But he's just got limited experience. So is this one of those guys that Jeff Brom's going to find, and they're going to be able to mold into this top tier passer? Because they took a step back with Miller Moss, and I got a chance to watch Miller Moss in the East West Shrine Bowl last night, and in person, I didn't realize just Miller Moss is a smaller guy, and you could see that on some of his velocity in the throws that he made. I think you're looking at, with Lincoln Kienholz, somebody that Louisville is going to be able to make a little bit more of the full offensive playbook work, and they're going to be able to push the ball down the field more and throw some of those throws that maybe most college quarterbacks won't be able to make. There's still the learning piece. There's still you're going to be learning on the fly with a quarterback who's got only 250 career passing yards under his belt, but nonetheless very talented. So you pair him with some of the guys that they've been able to bring in. Brody Foley, the big tight end from Tulsa. We'll see how he is taking that step up to the ACC, but also you add an elite edge rusher in Tyler Thompson. But man, their ability to retain as well, Isaac Brown, some of the different players that they were able to keep on this roster, very important as well when you evaluate the Louisville transfer class that stacked up. I mean, shoot, they have just a slew of transfers in this class, and I think it's really impressive when you look at it all as a whole. They have 31 transfers coming in, and 50 new players on this team between transfers and high school players. And there's a lot that Louisville has to work through and get ready to rock and roll with to make this thing jump to that next level. And you don't see them drop down and take a step back, because man, I just think Miller Moss and that group, they missed so many opportunities to be great this season with where they were teed up going into those final few games, and they kind of fell off, and it was disappointing for the ACC. That was a team that had everything in front of it, kind of similar to SMU. Like, you really would have seen those two teams kind of take off if they had capitalized on what they had in front of themselves, and been playoff teams in all likelihood, or at least complicated things where you're looking at two teams in for the ACC. And that's, as a whole, the ACC, it's easy to say, right? Like, you have to capitalize, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. If it was easy, everybody would do it. But you have so many teams that, and friends of the show, Eric McLean and Kelly Graham, like, they always say this, or they were on their pod this year, where just when you think, the ACC is getting to this point where, okay, there's going to be 4 teams involved in the college football playoff, then Louisville, SMU, Virginia, lose, things like that. There's that kind of bad weekend for the ACC in that respect. And, the league is then fighting for its life to get one in. And of course, lucky enough, Miami makes its own luck and goes to the national championship. But this league has to strike while the iron's hot, because there's opportunity for some of these teams to make that money in the playoffs that Miami did. And Louisville's one of those teams that they could really use it, because they're investing in the program under Jeff Brom to get to that next level. When I look at the group that is most disappointing, I think you've got to look at Pitt. Pitt has, I think, a program that, we spoke about on this podcast, that it was kind of weird the way we were watching it unfold with, with oh gosh, their quarterback, Mason Heinchel, not really having been one of those guys that announced anything that he was coming back. That okay, it just kind of the portal kind of came and went and ended up not going in, which is huge. But how much did Pitt burn in their ability to go out and acquire players, to go out and address positions that can help him, be a better quarterback going into year two? Because now it's his show. Eli Holstein's gone; he's off to Virginia. They lost some other key players. Rasheem Biles is gone; he's going to Texas. That was a key loss. They lost even their kicker, Bukowski, headed to Michigan. And, they just have a lot of holes that it seemed like they could have filled, they could have addressed. They do have Desmond Reed, I believe, coming back as well. So you've got that going for you. But I just think, anytime you're at the absolute bottom of the transfer portal, that's disappointing. And that's a team that doesn't have like a Duke or a Stanford, doesn't have that type of an excuse of sorts where there's academics in place, or you can't take this or can't take that. That's a program that is coming off a really strong year that should be looking to strike while the iron's hot. And look, maybe the rankings are all jacked up. I look at the ACC and I look at a few of these teams, and you look at the players that have left, and then you look at their ranking, and I struggle with the rankings on how this is done from our end. It still kind of ends up yielding a lot of the top classes, but it puts it in perspective. Pitt is going to get penalized in a big way for losing a guy like Rasheem Biles and some of the players they did. Whereas, the players that they add still aren't necessarily up to snuff either. So you're going to get that double penalization, I guess, over the course of the transfer portal haul that you bring in terms of how we do our rankings at On Three. But players that leave Power Four programs traditionally get a higher ranking just because they are a Power Four guy. And that's just kind of how it goes, because in part, they have a little bit of a better opportunity to pan out. They have a little bit of a better chance of being a dude somewhere else, and that they were just in a better spot. With how quickly the portal moves, there's just not enough time to do this as best you can. NFL draft has multiple years, has guys that do this for a living. College scouting for high school players has multiple years. They do that for a living. The portal, even teams, they're scouting these players really from, let's say, summer, and they're starting to build their list, and they're saying, okay, who do we know from our area? Okay, here's our list. Here's where they all are in college. Maybe some teams might say, all right, let's just only take the Power Four guys for now. Okay, then we start looking at who's playing early in the year, who's not. Okay, so-and-so's not playing. Maybe they're redshirting. Maybe they're not going to get on the field. Maybe they're going to leave. Let's go scout his film. And they work through all these things. So they have months. And then as far as our industry goes, we have a month. And then we do rankings on the fly. Now, some guys, we've gotten to the point now where most guys do have some sort of ranking, and it's called their impact ranking, which is really good for us to be able to quickly plug in a transfer ranking based off of. But it's still a difficult task to make. Like, and just because y'all know on here that I cover SMU, it's my day job. This ACC podcast we do Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, All Access AM, is a new, really cool project that I'm working on that I'm excited about. But as far as me knowing SMU, the 19 transfers that they lost, I look at them and they're like, SMU's group that they brought in is, I think, really solid. But I see some of the transfers and that left the program, and you transfer out, and I see the ranking. I'm like, guy hasn't sniffed the field. That guy hasn't done this or done that. He's been hurt. He blew out his knee or something like that. And you're sitting there like, why is he the same grade as somebody with production? So some of these rankings will never make sense. That's just what they do. But SMU still had a top 5 class, which should encourage you a little bit if you're a Mustang fan. So Oski, I hope that was a good enough long-winded explanation for you. But we're going to do, now that we're into classes here, we're going to go to school on some of these transfer classes. I'm going to pick them apart one by one, and we'll do some solo episodes on transfer classes, what's next for a program in the spring. I'm really looking forward to doing some of those things with you guys. So stay tuned for that. Appreciate you being here. Johnny Jackson, we're not done in the chat. We appreciate you being here. Who's the starting running back for SMU? That is going to be Kendrick Raphael, the Cal transfer, who totaled nearly 1,000 yards on the ground and did get over, I believe, 1,100 yards in all-purpose yardage on the season. I appreciate you, Arosky. Thanks for being here, and thanks for the kind words. So Cal running back Kendrick Raphael is going to be SMU starting. Will the secondary cover this year for SMU? It can't get any worse. And that's something that I think most SMU fans should hang on to, is the secondary was really bad last year. And really, from what I've heard on their end of things, you're seeing an SMU secondary that, and a team as a whole, that it wasn't, there were moments where they gave up those big, long third and forevers and fourth and, this or that. Clemson comes to mind. I think Cal comes to mind. TCU comes to mind. But really where SMU got crushed was 3rd and 7, 8, 9. Not just forever, but like medium. And they gave up big plays. They gave up yards after catch. They did all of those things. And that's where a lot of that was, I think, a product of, a little bit of personnel. They've switched out a good number of guys at the safety position. They brought in Jarvis Lee, who is going to be one of the best nickels in the country, they hope. Maybe very well the ACC. I mean, you want to talk about the praise that we're hearing? There's a lot. There's palpable buzz coming out of SMU around Jarvis Lee, and that position is so critical in that defense. So I think the secondary improves. If they can get into that 70s range, that's fine, because here's the thing. SMU's secondary, quote unquote, wasn't that great when they went to the ACC championship. Teams stacked up some passing yards on them because guess what? They were down. SMU only trailed a few minutes in ACC play that year. So they had to pass. They had to pass to come back. So secondary play is always, Mark Klein. I called it 3rd and SMU. Yeah, 3rd and SMU. It was crazy because guess what? If we're tracking short yardage defense, SMU's 3rd and short and 4th and short was legitimately had to have been the best in the country. Just always got off the field. Yep, exactly. Mark Klein, you took the words right out of my mouth. And the ACC is down. SMU must capitalize. I don't know if it's down. I think it's right where it was this year. I think SMU's schedule is a step back as a whole this year. And we'll get into a lot of that early looks at teams and team schedules and things like that. But the SMU schedule includes teams like Virginia. It includes teams like Wake Forest. And I don't see SMU having as much trouble with those two teams as you might think. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Tony Elliott's going to plug in, Bo Pribula, and they're going to have as much success as they did with Chandler Morris offensively, and their defense is going to step up and do all those things. They lost their offensive line coach to Stanford. I still think there's some changes that have impacted UVA that they're going to have to overcome. And then you fast forward after that game, look ahead to Wake. Wake's lost a bunch. Wake's win total is set at 4.5. Maybe that's Vegas daring us to be dumb and take the under. But Wake's well coached. They're going to be a tough out, but I don't see them having the same magical year they did this year. And so SMU's schedule takes a step back, I think, and you've got to capitalize. You've got 2 early season conference games as well against FSU and Louisville that have new quarterbacks on their rosters as well. Worth noting there as we get into it. Okay. Appreciate you guys in the chat. Do want to remind you guys that we are here Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern time. And we appreciate you guys being with us. We want you guys here. So make sure you guys are subscribed. Make sure you guys like, rate, review the podcast wherever you catch it at. And make sure you guys support us by telling your friends to subscribe. We've hit over 500 subs. Again, I told you guys on Monday, we've been working the word of mouth angle, and it has been awesome to see so many people subscribe and support us. It is a huge help. You guys have no idea how much it means to just get that one little click. If you think you're subscribed, double check, because 58% of you that watch are unsubscribed. So you might think that you're subscribed, but Make sure you subscribe to All Access AM on YouTube. Scan the QR code in the corner of your screen right now to go right to the YouTube channel and just subscribe. That is a key way you can help us out on the show. And as we get into the back half of this episode now, what a fun show. I love the chat interaction that takes us on our tangents. But we do have a couple of other things to talk about on the transfer portal front. We'll talk about Duke. We'll also look at a new hire for Stanford, and then we'll jump a little bit into the basketball side of things, and we'll try to fit in the quarterback discussion that might have to get tabled as a whole for next pod. So appreciate you being with us. We are presented by our friends at the La La Land Foundation. Normalizing kindness. That's what it is all about at the La La Land Foundation. Whether it's supporting them through money or time or mentorship or in-kind donations, there are so many ways to get involved with the La La Land Foundation. Go to lalalandfoundation.com. Find the nearest La La Land cafe near you as well, and experience why this is a organization that you want to partner with and you want to volunteer with and spend your time with, because they help so many people transition from the foster care system into quote unquote the real world as adults and make that move with confidence and an ability to operate the way that most people have been lucky enough to experience in their life, right? They need mentorship, they need help, and it is just such a fun organization to partner with because they just do it out of kindness. That's their whole soul mission, is to focus on the kindness aspect of everything they do, and then that lets everything else take care of itself. So it's a really cool organization for us to be partnered with. So make sure you reach out and see how you can get involved as well. The La La Land Foundation. Go to lalalandfoundation.com for more. May is Foster Care Awareness Month. So coming up, we'll be looking forward to doing some things with them this year as we continue to partner with them at the La La Land Foundation. Going to skip over our Dabo Swinney, Ole Miss, Clemson debate again. We had a lot of that on the Monday show, but still just waiting and waiting for the NCAA to release some sort of statement around Dabo Swinney's rant. The NCAA is involved. They are getting information. Apparently, they are maybe, in fact, doing their jobs around this one, and we'll see if anything comes with it. But they also have a little bit more paperwork on their hands because Duke has landed a commitment from Walter Eget, the San Jose State quarterback. He spent 5 seasons playing at San Jose State, so he needs a waiver because he played in 1 game in 2021, 3 games in 2022, and did not play in 2023. But over the last 2 seasons, he was the starter, and he threw for 5,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, threw for 17 touchdowns and 9 picks this past year, completed 59% of his passes. San Jose State was really bad. But Duke is quarterback hungry, looking for a quarterback to come in and compete with Henry Beeline, and that is what they are going to get out of the portal. They do need a waiver for him to play, so the NCAA has more work to do here with Walter Eget. I don't know too much about him, but what I do know is that Johnny Brewer, the offensive coordinator at Duke, has his work. He's going to earn every bit of his money this year trying to figure out how to get this offense going so that Duke can maybe stand a chance to get back to Charlotte and compete for the ACC championship once again. Stanford is expected to hire Alabama assistant defensive line coach Jamie Mosley as its next defensive line coach, according to Pete Thamel on Tuesday. Former Crimson Tide linebacker this will be his first full-time lead position coach at the Power 4 level. He played at Alabama from 2015 to 18, was a part of 2 national championship teams in his time with the Crimson Tide. His brother, CJ Mosley, also played for Alabama, former highly touted prospect. Jamie Mosley went undrafted. He spent time in the NFL on some practice squads and has been working with defensive line coach Freddie Roach. So now heads to Stanford to work under Tavita Pritchard and that Stanford new coaching staff that Andrew Luck has assembled. He's actually the 3rd Alabama coach to leave the program and take another job. Jamarcus Shepard went over to Oregon State to be the head coach. quarterbacks coach Nick Sheridan. He's now the offensive coordinator at Michigan State. So that makes 3 coaches off the Alabama staff that is headed off to do other things. And there's been some changes over there in Tuscaloosa as a whole. And Adrian Clem is former SMU assistant. Adrian Clem is going over to be the next offensive line coach at Alabama as well. They parted ways with their O-line coach in this offseason. So let's do this. We have a group looking at the national title odds for college basketball, and we'll table our quarterback discussion. I will say this. This is going on the notepad for the Thursday show, so make sure you're tuned in. We'll talk about quarterbacks as a whole. College basketball is continuing to deliver. I think this is from a following perspective, this is a lot of fun this year. And I don't know how you feel out there, especially those of you who are diehard, long-term ACC basketball followers. But the way this season is unfolding, with the amount of talent we're seeing out of the freshmen, with the amount of buzz around the NBA draft lottery being littered with freshmen, this is a really cool season to cover. You have Cameron Boozer with Duke. You have Caleb Wilson with UNC. You have some of these other big names as well. But it is still just sitting back and watching these teams that play high level of basketball and have taken it to such a level that now you're wondering, okay, it's not, making the NCAA tournament. It's, who do they match up with well if they get to the Final Four? And that's where Duke has certainly ascended now. They're 29-1 in ACC games over the last 2 years, I believe. They have been absolutely dominant. And Monday night, they flexed big time over Louisville in that win in Cameron Indoor. They were able to get everything they wanted. And really, this Duke team, I think you could look at that game and you could say, okay, Duke only led by like a few points at half or what have you, but it was a game that was kind of fool's gold, I think, a little bit for Louisville. It was a 10-point lead at half. It was a few points, with a few minutes to go, and then Duke goes out and absolutely just handles Louisville in the second half. They win by 31 points, 83-52. Duke over Louisville. A dominant showing by the Blue Devils. They're now 19-1 in league play. They're 19-1 overall, 8-0 in league play. Cam Boozer had another 19 points. Ryan Conwell led the way for Louisville with 18. But this is a Duke team that is just getting to a level now that it just looks like they're going to be unstoppable en route to an ACC championship. And they've been able to do so many things this year and win in so many different ways. And, funny enough, kind of SMU without Boopy Miller was a team that really kind of challenged them even at Cameron Indoor. And, they were still able to circle the wagons and get that done on a couple weekends ago. But Duke is just playing at such a level with Cam Boozer that you just have to sit back and kind of appreciate it. Cam Boozer, 19 points, 50% from the field, a double-double with 10 boards. And, that whole group has just been playing so well. You get contributions from different guys, and they're okay with letting each other take the lead. Even though Cam Boozer's been that dude, I believe averaging over 20 points per game, still in league play and things like that, and just having a dominant showing. And meanwhile, you're shutting down Michael Brown, another talented freshman, 7 points in 34 minutes, 1 of 13 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3-point range. Louisville shot just 30% from the field. Duke, meanwhile, 51% from the field. Duke continues to find different ways to impress me with just what they do and how they get all their team involved. And it's just a really, I think, for a Duke team that last year really should have done more than it did, you're seeing this one pick up the slack and take it to a next level. So I think Duke is well on its way here to continuing to ascend in the national rankings and make that move, I think, up, maybe even higher come next week's AP Top 25 poll with what they put together against Louisville. And quick pause here, and we'll get to more conversation around NC State basketball. But I did forget on my rundown, Miami transfer wide receiver JoJo Trader did commit to NC State. So CJ Bailey picks up a big talent addition here for this passing game for the NC State Wolfpack. It's JoJo Trader transfers from Miami to play for NC State. He was a wide receiver that has 2 years of eligibility remaining, coming in with CJ Bailey from the Miami area. So they've got that tie. And, a couple of other Miami players have gone up there. But JoJo Trader is a big bodied wide receiver. He had 19 receptions, 269 yards, and 2 scores in 2 seasons. And he had 5 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown against SMU this year. That was his career best. There were just times this year where JoJo Trader kind of literally took his eye off the ball. I think he had some issues with drops, but he is still an incredibly talented player, just oozing with talent coming out of that Chaminade Madonna prep program a few years ago. He played with CJ Bailey in high school. This could be a reunion for CJ Bailey and JoJo Trader that makes big waves in the ACC. And, they needed a jolt for that offense, and they got it with JoJo Trader. And I expect him to be one of the starting wide receivers for the NC State Wolfpack this season. If he can stay focused and stay locked in and kind of look at this as okay, I got to go here for 2 years and do this as a job interview for the NFL, JoJo Trader is going to come out on the right end of this, and it's going to help a lot having a guy like CJ Bailey tossing him the rock. So did want to say that before we got to NC State and what they were able to do, dominating Syracuse, a 20-point win Tuesday night. Will Wade and this program now sitting at 15-6, 6-2 in league play. So they have figured things out here in league play so far. They do have a little bit more of a difficult schedule coming up as they get into your SMUs and your Virginia Techs and Louisville's as February gets here. But they do close at Wake Forest, a team that really struggled Tuesday night as well in a loss. We'll get to them in a second. But NC State gets 23 points from Darian Williams. Just a terrific night for him and what he was able to do, 9 of 16 from the field. NC State shot 51% from the field, held Syracuse 39%. This is a home game for NC State as well, and they were able to get it done. So Will Wade has them in contention for the NCAA tournament, no doubt about that. Wake Forest, though, loses 80-76 at Pitt. This is a Steve Forbes team that now 11-10 overall, 2-6 in ACC play. I've got to believe that Steve Forbes is on the hot seat. This has not gone well, and you're seeing now for this Wake Forest team, the wheels kind of slowly but surely fall off as they have lost 3 straight. Here's the thing, though. They've lost to SMU, they've lost to Duke, now they've lost to Pitt. Then they get an opportunity here to close out January against NC State. If they can bounce back, that would be obviously nice, but they've lost now 5 of their last 6, and their lone win coming against lowly Florida State. But this is a Wake Forest team that is not headed in the right direction right now so far this season in league play, and they will have a lot to do. They have a lot to do to figure things out ahead of facing NC State. Pitt, on the other hand, now sits at 9-12 overall, 2-6 in league play. I believe Pitt got a win over Georgia Tech recently, so they've kind of been a little weird in that respect, kind of really notching down some programs that aren't great, but have been, allowing a Pitt team to not be winless in league play. I could just say that now. Georgia Tech goes to Virginia Tech and falls 71-65 Tuesday night. Virginia Tech now 5-4 in league play, 16-6 overall. Virginia Tech is so close to being like a top 3 type of team in the ACC, but they've fell victim to just so many heartbreaking moments this season. Obviously, the SMU game comes to mind with Boobie Miller's half-court shot, but Virginia Tech nonetheless still fighting and drops Georgia Tech to 11-10 overall, 2-6 in league play. And Ben Hammond had 20 against Georgia Tech to lead the way for the Hokies. All right, one final piece of ACC basketball here. This was a nail biter, no question about it. At one point, Virginia found itself down 44-35 at half. It was also a game where Notre Dame, I believe, had somewhere in the range of like a 20-point lead at one half. at one point, and it is the tied for the largest comeback in school history. 19-point first half deficit for Virginia, number 17 Virginia, to knock off Notre Dame in double overtime on the road. 197 is the final score. Virginia improves to 17-3 overall, 6-2 in league play, and you have Notre Dame that falls to 11-10, 2-6 in league play. DeRitter, a career high 32 points for Virginia. Sam Lewis added 21 points and 6 assists for the Cavaliers as they were able to find a way up in South Bend to win on a three-pointer from Sam Lewis with 3 seconds left in the first overtime to extend the game. And then Virginia was able to get it done in the final moments of second OT to again improve to 17-3 overall, 6-2 in league play, escape with a win on the road. Notre Dame is another program right now that I think you look at everything that's happened with Micah Shrewsbury this year and just the frustration boiling over at various points. There's probably going to be changes on the horizon there, I would think. Notre Dame is now 0-14 against ranked opponents in Micah Shrewsbury's tenure over 3 seasons. So disappointing for the Irish. They had their shot. They could not get it done. And Virginia's 19-point comeback matches won against Arizona in 2006 back then in November in a non-conference game. So I believe that would make this the largest league play comeback in school history. So pretty impressive stuff. Nonetheless, they took a little moment to de-ice themselves and wake up as Virginia was able to knock off Notre Dame in a sense. When you look at the ACC, they are making grounds, to be one of the best basketball conferences in America. Big 12, Big 10, SEC, all are, really stepping up. The ACC is by far the most improved conference in the league. We could see anywhere from 7, 8, 9 teams go to the NCAA tournament, kind of back where it should be in that respect. But based on KenPom rankings, they're 4th right now. But we're seeing, I think, the ACC's top teams, for the most part, kind of take care of business. You see that with like a Virginia Tech. What's keeping them out of that top 3? Well, they're not finishing down the stretch in games, and they're getting some heartbreakers sent their way. But, they're still a team that can make the NCAA tournament. And when you look at the bracketology coming out, we're seeing some programs that are still hanging on for dear life here. Like Virginia Tech, they need to find a couple of wins here down the stretch to make it into the tournament. But Duke obviously sitting very high up there. You're seeing Clemson be thrown around as a 6th seed. You're seeing SMU be around that 7, 8, 9 range. And of course, you have your Louisvilles and NC State and those types of teams also very much involved. Virginia, North Carolina, and North Carolina was kind of on the verge of really taking a step back and being a true bubble team going into February, but they were able to kind of right things and get things on the right track here as of late. And so big deal for Hubert Davis to get that done. Caleb Wilson and what he's done for North Carolina to right that ship, not only from a offensive standpoint, all the fun things he does dunking the basketball, but staying true to his game and going after it on the defensive end. That was something that North Carolina really had to change, and they've done it the last couple games, and they've really been able to right the ship here and settle down the masses. I mean, this was getting to the point where you wondered, okay, are we going to see a move made away from Hubert Davis, who, at this point is also fighting for the right to keep the Dean Center on campus as well. So ACC, Duke leading the way in terms of national title odds so far, but there's a lot of teams that can make some noise, but they've got to get a couple trending back in the right direction here as we go towards the month of February and when the moving season can certainly start for some of these teams. But nonetheless, this has been a fun ACC league play to start us off so far. And I'm really looking forward to seeing who rises to the top as far as the cream goes here down the stretch. So Thursday show, we will break down a little bit more on the ACC basketball side of things. This Wednesday night, got some more action for you guys on ACC hoops. Virginia, fresh off that Notre Dame trip, they're off. But two pair of matchups on this Wednesday night: Cal at Florida State, 6 p.m. on ACC Network. State of Florida kind of really close to getting some snow dumped on themselves. So hopefully Cal can make it over there. Stanford at Miami, they're going to have no problem there. But 8 p.m. Central Time on ACC Network. So both Cali schools are out east this week, and they'll swap spots over there, playing Miami and Florida State on Saturday. We'll preview another busy slate of ACC play for Saturday on the Thursday show as well. And hope you guys are tuned in with us. And we appreciate you guys supporting the show. Do want to remind you guys as well about our friend Doyle Glass, one of the best-selling authors on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Perfect time when you're maybe going through your New Year's resolution still and you're wanting to read more. That's always one that I want to do. Doyle Glass and his book, Lions of Medina, and his book, Swift Sword. Great gifts. Great, whether you have birthdays, Father's Day, you can plan ahead, your favorite history buff. Lions of Medina and Swift Sword are great options for you to gift to somebody or just pick up for yourself and learn about the firsthand accounts that are in these books from the Vietnam War, these heroes for America fighting for their lives and this country. Doyle Glass did an incredible job encapsulating these battles that he profiles in these books, Lions of Medina and Swift Sword. And of course, later this year, he is coming out with the World War II book as well. Looking forward to that coming from our friend Doyle Glass, codename Lionel. Look for that later this year. So really excited to have Doyle partnering with us at All Access AM, and we appreciate his support. So make sure you check out his books. Make sure you give OPW Solutions a call as well. Snow and ice control. Trust me, guys, don't wait for your business. Make sure you make the change to our friends at OPW Solutions, and please support the La La Land Foundation. We're excited to be partnered with the La La Land Foundation, and we appreciate all of you guys who subscribe, make this channel great. Drop in the comments. Let us know what you think about the show, and if you have any more questions, topics to cover, we'll be here. So appreciate all of you guys who are with us. We've hit the 500 subscriber mark. We're excited about that on our YouTube channel. So make sure you scan the QR code in your corner and go subscribe to the channel. If you haven't, let's get to 1,000, guys. Let's ramp this up. And we appreciate all of you guys being here as we cover the ACC Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm Billy Embody. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, everybody. Hope everybody is staying warm, staying safe out there as this weather moves across the country. We appreciate you guys watching. Catch you next time on All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody.